Hello everyone, it's been a while since I've made anything sword-like, so I thought this week I would make one of my favorite blades from Cyberpunk 2077, the Machete. Simple design, clean, sleek, linear, and highly effective, but when it came time to paint, I wanted to customize it a little bit, so I used a secret scenic artist technique that I will share with you. So let's head to the shop and get started. I printed the machete in 3 pieces with a layer height of 0.15. They printed really clean and even. There are a couple of bumpy spots that happen sometimes with layer changes, but nothing horrible. And since the machete needs to look like a real metal blade, I want to get the surface as clean as possible, so I'm going to sand the pieces with a 120 grit pad on my hand sander. A hand sander is a good way to cover large surfaces quickly. Just be careful not to let it sit in one spot for too long, or it'll heat up the plastic and cause damage to the print. Next, I switch to some 180 and sand by hand. I can't generate enough friction like the sander, so by switching to doing it by hand allows the print to cool down from the sander, and I'm still able to proceed removing layer lines. After the 180, I switch to some 220. You'll notice the color change in the print that's happening at this point, and working with a dark colored filament like black really allows you to see where you've sanded already. With the pieces sanded, I can now assemble. I'm going to start by inserting some glue into the opening in part 3. I'm using E6000 because it works great as a shock absorbing glue, because when it cures, it remains rubbery and flexible. Next, I insert an 8-inch piece of 1/4-inch dowel. Then over this flat surface, I squeeze some CA glue and a little bit of E6000. Then part 2 can be slid onto the supports and aligned. Oh, before I forget, the opening in part 2 gets the E6000 as well. Once I'm happy with the alignment, I cure the CA glue instantly by squeezing some zip kicker onto it. This means I don't have to hold it and wait. I can move on to squeezing some E6000 into the 2 openings at the other end of part 2. 2 6-inch long pieces of the 1/4-inch dowel are inserted into the holes. Glue is applied to the flat surfaces and to the openings in part 1, which is then slid on and aligned and has the glue set with the zip kicker. While I finish setting that up, I would really appreciate it if you would click the subscribe button if you haven't already. It's completely free to you and will help my channel grow. Plus, if you click the notification bell, you can customize your notifications so you never miss a project. Thank you. I let the E6000 cure overnight. Then, to clean up the seams, I always like to use my trusted glazing and spot putty. It's easy to work with and dries fairly quickly. I begin by applying a thick layer to the seams, and as I'm applying, I'm pressing to make sure it's filling the seam. The putty does shrink a little as it dries, which is why I apply it thick. After it dries, I sand the spots down with the 220 grit. The putty is usually sandable after a half an hour, but temperature and humidity can affect it. For the next step, I mix some of the putty with some acetone and apply this to the entire machete surface with an old paintbrush. This step will help fill any unevenness in the print layers left behind even after the sanding. The print might feel smooth to the touch, but there are always fine lines that will be visible once you apply paint, and this step mitigates that. After the putty and acetone dry, I smooth it with the 220 grit. Some of the print might show through, but that's fine. You'll notice as you sand the putty away how it is remaining in those hair-like lines on the surface. This does make a mess, so I always put down a scrap piece of paper to catch the debris, and also wear a respirator to avoid breathing in the fine dust. With it sanded and the excess dust removed, the machete can receive its primer paint. I'm using this 2-in-1 filler and sandable primer. It'll help fill in any unevenness that still may be lingering, and it really helps when trying to get a glass-like finish on a 3D print, especially something like a blade. Okay, I've let the primer dry overnight and it's looking relatively smooth, but you'll notice there are some small spots that still need a little bit more attention, and since this primer is sandable, it means I can take some 400 grit and polish up the primer. Which means wet sanding. Wet sanding is really easy. I'm just dipping the sandpaper into a bowl of water and sand the surface. This helps get rid of those uneven spots and also polishes the surface to a silky smooth finish. After I sand, I like to wipe the area down with a soft cloth to remove the debris and take a look at what's happening. Notice the area is looking pretty smooth, still a couple of spots, but another pass of wet sanding should take care of those. After the wet sanding and the print is thoroughly dry, the machete can be sprayed with a glossy black spray paint. Whenever working with something that needs to look metallic in the end, black gloss is always needed as a base layer. I'm not sure as to the exact science behind it, but it makes the metallics really shine and pop. After a couple of layers of the black, the machete is looking super clean and shiny and smooth, which means that all that sanding has paid off. And now it's time to spray it with a metallic silver. You want to build up thin layers because metallics have a tendency to run. After the metallic silver has dried, I'm going to airbrush some of this metallic tin acrylic over the entire machete. This step just tones down the silver aspect of the paint and gives more of a steel look and finish to the metallic shine. Then, to break up the solidness of the metallics, I like to lightly mist the surface with a flat black. It still allows the blade to shine, but it adds some realism to the surface. I then use the same flat black on the grip scales. The bolt heads I let remain the steel color, but I want the scales to be a solid black. I'm using a fine bristle flat brush to apply, and to avoid visible brush marks, I thin the paint slightly, and I'll apply 2 coats. Okay, so the blade is looking like this, but I want to give it a little more characteristic paint job, and for that, I'm going to use a bright orange to keep in feel with the cyberpunk world. Now, for the secret trick we scenic artists use. Come close. Oh, too close. Back up a couple steps. Ugh, that's better. Now, this technique was taught to me by my mentor, and no fooling, back in their day, scene shops held on to private techniques with a death grip, but I'm going to share it with you, and it is one of the best aging techniques I've found. The tool that you will need for this is a block of wood. What, you think I'm joking? Watch what it can do. Take the block and brush on a layer of paint, then lightly rub the painted block onto a scrap piece of wood. This just rubs away any of the excess globs and evens it out. Then scrape the block across the surface of the object. Scenic artists and prop makers call this block aging for obvious reasons, and it's a great way to age up a prop, making it look like chipping paint layers. It's that easy. I block aged the orange not only onto the grip but also onto the blade as well. I did leave the sharp edge of the blade clean so it looks like the orange has been well worn away. And like that, the machete is finished. As 3D printed props go, it was really easy to print and assemble since it only consists of 3 pieces. And even then, the machete is pretty impressive at approximately 27 inches long. It's basically almost the size of a cutlass. I hope you enjoyed this project, and if you want to make this machete, I've posted the link to the files below. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and feel free to share it with all your friends and family. Please subscribe if you haven't, and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a great day. And remember, if you are building any of my builds or using any of my templates, feel free and tag me at House of Props on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, because I would really like to see your fantastic work. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.